Fog is back, and around the world, so are strange illnesses. Not the same virus, not the same symptoms, not even the same explanations. Just the same question echoing everywhere. Why now? Last year, many of us noticed something strange. A thick, unusual fog rolled in, and not long after, people started getting sick. Different sicknesses, different reactions, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Now it's happening again. Today, unsettling videos are surfacing from around the internet. Dense fog, strange conditions, and once more, reports of unexplained illness spreading quietly across the globe. Is this a coincidence, a natural cycle, or a pattern we've seen before and forgotten? Tonight, we're not jumping to conclusions. We're looking at history, at documented government testing, at patterns that repeat when people stop asking questions. And as always, we'll examine what's happening through a biblical and prophetic lens, because Scripture warned us about deception, pestilence, and signs that many would dismiss until it was too late. This isn't fear. This is discernment. This is Lake Files, and this is From Conspiracy to Confirmed. Let's take a closer look. Fog itself is not unusual. We have many foggy days and nights here in the Adirondacks. But meteorologists will tell you it forms when warm, moist air meets cooler ground. But not all fog behaves the same. What people are noticing now and last year is fog that appears suddenly and lingers unusually long, forms in conditions where it normally wouldn't, coincides with reports of respiratory irritation, headaches, fatigue, sore throats, and flu-like symptoms. Historically, when fog becomes associated with illness, scientists don't dismiss it. They investigate it. One of the most documented examples occurred in London, 1952, known as the Great Smog of London. A thick fog mixed with industrial pollutants killed over 12,000 people in a matter of days. At the same time, authorities downplayed it until the hospital admissions skyrocketed. The lesson from history is simple. Fog can carry much more than just moisture. What makes the current situation unsettling is not one virus, but many. Across multiple regions, health agencies are reporting respiratory infections out of season, viral symptoms that test negative for common strains, clusters of illness without a clear source. This isn't speculation, it's documented. In recent years, even mainstream outlets have acknowledged mystery respiratory outbreaks, unidentified viral clusters, illnesses that don't fit known patterns. Doctors often use phrases like unusual presentation, unknown origin, likely environmental factors. That last phrase matters. Likely environmental factors, because environmental exposure doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a cough that won't go away, a flu that feels different, a fatigue that just lingers. And when those symptoms appear after atmospheric events, scientists take note. And this isn't happening only overseas. In Atlanta, Georgia, residents have recently reported thick fog conditions followed by waves of illness, respiratory issues, flu-like symptoms, lingering coughs, and fatigue. Again, not all the same sickness, and not all testing positive for the same cause. Local conversations, social media reports, and first-hand accounts describe the same pattern seen elsewhere. Fog first, illnesses after, and no clear explanation tying it together. One city doesn't prove a theory, but it does strengthen a pattern. Here's where history gets uncomfortable, because governments have admitted in declassified documents to releasing substances in the air without public consent. Let's talk facts. Operation Sea Spray, 1950. The U.S. Navy sprayed bacteria over San Francisco. We've talked about this before. To study how biological agents would spread in a city. Hundreds became sick. At least one person is no longer with us at that time. The public was never informed at that time. St. Louis and Midwest aerosol tests, 1950s through the 1960s. The U.S. Army dispersed zinc, cadmium, sulfide particles over populated areas to study dispersion patterns. Again, no consent. Again, denied for decades. Cold War atmospheric experiments. Governments openly tested aerosol dispersal, airborne tracking particles, chemical spreading modeling. These are not theories. These are public record. So when people ask, would governments really do this? History answers yes. They already have. Now, before we go any further, I want to be very clear. This video is not making medical claims. It is not diagnosing illness, and it is not stating that any current fog, weather event, or illness is caused by a specific action or group. What we are doing here is examining documented history, publicly available information, and observable patterns, and asking thoughtful questions, not issuing conclusions. The historical examples discussed are declassified government programs, now part of the public record. Any modern events mentioned are based on reports, eyewitness accounts, and officially acknowledged anomalies, not speculation presented as fact. This content is educational, historical, and discussion purposes only. Viewers should always rely on qualified medical professionals for health concerns and official guidance for safety decisions. Questioning narratives is not misinformation. Noticing patterns is not panic. And seeking discernment is not fear. Everything shared here is intended to encourage critical thinking, awareness, and personal responsibility, not alarm. Thank you for watching thoughtfully. So, now we're going to ask again, would governments really do this? History answers yes, they already have. Here's the key point. No one needs to claim it's intentional, it's malicious, or it's happening again to recognize a pattern. When you see atmospheric anomalies, followed by illness, followed by vague explanations, followed by silence, you're not paranoid for noticing. You're paying attention. History shows us that truth often emerges years later, long after damage is done. Scripture doesn't give timelines. It gives signs. Jesus warned in Matthew 24 of pestilence, deception, fear, confusion. Luke 21 speaks of fearful sights and great signs from heaven. The Bible never says people would immediately recognize the signs. It says many would dismiss them, not because they weren't happening, but because life would feel too busy, too noisy, too distracted. Discernment isn't panic, it's awareness. No one is saying the fog is evil. No one is claiming a single cause. No one is telling you what to believe. But history teaches us this. When strange conditions repeat, when illness spreads without explanation, and when authorities tell us not to worry without answers, that's when discernment matters most. Watch carefully. Ask questions. Test everything. Because the fog always clears eventually. And when it does, what it was hiding often becomes visible.